I'm going to start a series of brief videos talking about Illustrator, getting into Illustrator 2019. As you can see here, I have had this program and have been using this program for a little bit, and the reason you can tell is that you can see previous files that I've worked on. So if you're opening Illustrator for the first time, you will not see, obviously, files that you've worked on. You have a slightly different look. But what I'm going to show you today it would be the same whether you're opening up Illustrator for the first time or, like myself, have been using it for a while. So I'm going to go ahead and click on New, and up comes a series of options. So let's say I want to create something that would be used for mobile. You can see I get these options on some kind of templates in a sense as far as the size goes. We have web selection, we have print, film and video, art and illustration. What I'm going to ask you to do is to select print. And in this one, it's letter, which is what I would like you to select. I believe that's the default. Now, we're going to make some adjustments on this. First of all, I'm going to ask you to click on the measurement type, and we're going to go away from points, and we're going to go to inches. So you can immediately see in inches, this is 8.5 inches wide and 11 inches tall. And the orientation is portrait. We can also click here and go landscape, and you'll notice how those change. Going to go back to portrait. Artboards is referring to pages. How many pages do you want in that file? We're just going to stay with the one today. We are not going to be working with bleeds, but we will come back and look at that at a later time. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on options. And what I would like you to do is I would like you to select RGB and ignore this. And I would also like you to select a medium raster effect, 150 ppi. We're going to stick with the default view and then say create. There we go. Took a little while there. Now, because I've been using this, I know that my setup is going to look different than yours if you're opening up for the first time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset my essentials so it shall look like how your Illustrator will look. So I'm going to go ahead and select reset. And here we go. This is probably what you're looking at right now. So let me do just a little kind of walkthrough. First of all, here's where your tools are. And having worked in Photoshop, you're going to see this actually looks kind of familiar. It's really not unusual for people, regardless of how much experience they have. It's not unusual for people who are bouncing back and forth between Photoshop and Illustrator to at some point forget which program they're in. I've had this happen where I'm going to look for a tool and I'm like, where's that tool, where's that tool? And then it turns out I'm in Photoshop and I'm thinking I'm in Illustrator, or vice versa. So if that happens to you folks, don't freak out. That's pretty normal. Here are the tools, and just like in Photoshop, I can go ahead and grab onto this gray area and move things. Same thing I'll show you with the palettes in a minute. But one thing I like to do, and this is just my own personal preference, it doesn't need to be yours, is I actually like to have the toolbox set up like this. I like that. And you'll notice that it looks pretty similar to Photoshop. Now we have different palettes, and again, we can go ahead and click and drag palettes out. We can reduce them like this, and we can drag them back in here. You can see how the area up above is changing to that blue line. That tells me I'm getting that back into that area. So if you need a palette that is not showing in here, what you can do is you can go to you can go to Windows, and you can see you have a great deal of additional palettes that you can work with. Let's just pull up layers. Another thing that I like to work with, whether I'm in Photoshop or Illustrator, are the rulers. Now, rulers are in View, and about halfway down you'll see Show Rulers. You can also do the keystroke of Control R. And the nice thing about that Control R, you just need to toggle it on and off. Go ahead and Control R. To use rulers, what you do is you click on the ruler itself and you drag. You click, you drag. Click and drag. Click and drag. Now the default setting in Illustrator is that guidelines, which we've just made, are by default they are locked. So if you need to move or remove a guideline, what you need to do is go to View, Rulers, and you can either guides. A little bit crazy here. So hide guides will make the guides not be visible. They are still there. Go ahead and say Show Guides. There they are. Some other options on this are Unlock Guides. So if I've placed a guide and it's off by, say, 1/2 inch, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to unlock guides, and you can see if I have to get my pointer right on it, okay? I'll get the mouse and click, and I can go ahead and move these. Oopsie. Sometimes you have to be very slow. Take your time and get it right on there. Now let's say I'm fine with where these are placed. I'm going to go back into View, Guides, and I'm going to go ahead and lock that. Now you can see you can also clear them and release them. I'm going to go ahead and leave it like that. You do have the capacity in Illustrator to make custom guides. Perhaps you want a circle as a guide, or you want to create a more elaborate guide. Those are things that you are definitely able to do in Illustrator, but today, right now, I'm going to just show you the basics. Now, to save a file, what you do is you go File, and you can either save as, which is what we'll be doing for this first time, or save a copy. So let's go ahead and select Save As. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that onto my desktop. So I'm going to click Desktop up here. And we name it. Probably should have done this a little while ago. I'm just going to name this as Test File. And the default feature is to make this a native Adobe Illustrator or AI file. So that is the default. You see, you also have options of making it an EPS, an Illustrator template, SVG, and SVG compressed. What we're going to do is we're going to leave it at the native file, and we'll say Save. Now, in this section here, we're going to, if you need to save it down, let's say you are working in in the lab and you're working in 219, and for some reason when you go home you're not using 219, you're using a different version, you can go ahead and save it down. The problem you may run into is opening it up again in the lab. So, but this is something that you can do. I'm going to say just leave these at this point, these default settings, and say OK. And there you go. You've opened a file. You've created a new file. You have saved a new file in Adobe Illustrator 219.